morning, everyone. Oops, going on backwards. Dr. R. Michael Fisher here, Fearology Institute. Hi. Time to do a video on fearology. Not the first video, I've done a few of them, but I have a few things that I want to work with today and share with you that concerns I have about how fearology gets used and what fearologist is, how it gets used as a term in popular culture, and so on. So the title of this video is Fearology, Are You Serious? Well, some people are serious. Some people find it humorous and interesting to use fearology as a new way to talk about anything to do with fear. And they can call that fearology. And then there's some of us that are interested in fearology a little differently. So if this was representing fearology from the Science Fearology Lab here, fearology, we could even think of it in black and white, very simple terms. This is fearology, this isn't fearology. Here to just use a simple example. So just when you think you understand what fearology is, oh, you find another layer and another layer. And now you think you know what fearology is, and oh, now I know what fearology is. And well, the Russian dolls analogy is an interesting one. Of when you think you know what something is, you go a little deeper and you look a little closer, and there's layers and layers. So you'll notice it went from big to small, and I often say most of what people talk about and use in the term fearology is really the surface. It's the easy to grasp, simple, common sense, or just even, like as I say, playful, or even can be used in a kind of way to diss and create a kind of cynicism about fearology through a joke about it. I've seen them all, right? I've seen everything out there over the years since 1989 when I took it seriously. Now, I didn't invent the word fearology until about 2000, and I only did it sort of as a joke myself because some people says, "Oh, there comes the fearologist." And the reason they said that is just because I was constantly researching and talking and writing about and teaching about fear. So they had, their little joke, "Oh, he's a fearologist." Well, ology really means, right, the study of. That's what it means. And then you can put anything in front of ology. And so there's horrorology, there's panicology, there's botany, and there's biology, and there's all kinds of ologies and so on. In fact, I just recently saw this on the internet. Philosophical Buddhaka. And the subtitle of the article is Buddhist Phobiology or Buddhist Fearology. And it was a Buddhist person that had written this, and they were just, in this little blurb on their blog, were just saying, I want to share about a Buddhist perspective on fear. Well, they could have just done the whole article on a Buddhist perspective on fear, but they chose to call it fearology. I just got a manuscript from a person who was writing a book and called it Exotic Fearology, the title of the book. And they thought, and they know a little bit about my work, so they thought I would be interested in writing something about the book and whatever. And then I had another person many years ago send me a book called First Stages of the Fearologist, and so on. So there's also a book you can find on the internet that's very popular. It's called Fearology 1, 2 or something, and it's all about stories about people's fears and phobias. So you see what I'm saying? That's kind of the first, big layer of what fearology is about. And it's the easiest to grasp, I suppose, and the most popular, but not that serious. And because you actually don't even need to use the word fearology with that kind of stories about how people encounter fear, how they handle it, manage it, grow from, managing fear well, or transforming it, or healing, or whatever it might be, the story. But when you get down to that really tiny little level of what is fear, in the smallest little container, by that time, not too many people are exploring fearology that deep. And I guess for various reasons, I have chosen to do that, and I'm attempting to put fearology out in the world seriously, but there's very few people who look at that level. And, just a quick analogy of how serious I take fear is, this is a book I'm just reading right now. Yeah, not light stuff, because fear is, in my view, very clearly in others. It's very directly even to the concept of evil itself on the planet. So we have a fear problem, we have an evil problem, we have a love versus fear problem, we have a good versus evil problem, would be kind of the big picture. And yet it would just be the small container that most people would never get to see fearology as a study of fear that's about evil, for example. Okay, without all of those terms for a moment and pushing that aside, I just wanted to celebrate that this is my second year of doing a video, teaching videos when I first started them, so 2 years ago. I've done 3 or 4 videos on fearology, on various aspects of them. But because, things get buried after a couple of years and people don't scroll down and find those things, I thought, well, I would just do this one today to remind you of the problem of words and the problem of even the notion of fearology. So just to give you a vision first of my idea of the future fearologist, whether they wear a white coat or whether they wear a t-shirt that says "Be Fearless," is irrelevant and just an accoutrement of drama for the play. But we do have a society that operates on roles and costumes and signifiers of who and what makes something legitimate and serious. So sometimes I play it up, but the serious vision I have, the image I have, and I had this one day, is that someday on the planet there would be a human being, or a group of human beings, ideally a society of human beings, professional society, a philosophical society, whatever it might be called, or a foundation that supports research and teaching and writing and communicating about the nature of the fear problem. If the fearologist would actually be someone professionally recognized, academically and scholarly, if they are, but also just as a professional level. And they would be called upon, just like anyone would call upon, say, an ecologist, if you have a problem with certain kind of environmental conditions, a certain situation, could be global warming, and somebody would ring you up, and it might be from the UN, it might be from a government of a country or a corporation or anywhere. It could be an activist group. And they say, well, we'd really like to talk to a fearologist, or have you got one available? And we'd have a list of them in this organization. We'd say, oh, sure, well, you could call so and so, so and so and so and so and so, so, because they're trained fearologists. They're not just trained; they're educated, and they're life committed to the development of fearology. And that's at all levels, right? from this level, they can communicate and talk with people, to this level, they can communicate and talk to people. Full spectrum, all the way across. And they wouldn't just, be interested in very superficial answers to how do I handle fear? How do we handle the fear problem? But they would say, yeah, well, let's sit down. We want to do a really thorough, holistic, and integral analysis. And I've done many videos on the notion of holistic integral as a methodological framing for fearology and fear studies, and a critical perspective on it is also what I think is important, not just a functionalist perspective, but one that's really critical of the very nature of our society and world and why we've got ourselves into the fear problem. So, right, all of those searchings of the fearologist, there's no limit to, and that's why I've been on this 31 years, there's no limit to how interesting and challenging it is to really understand the fear problem. So I invite you to that journey if you're interested, and even or just as you use the word fearology yourself in life, to use it with that kind of awareness and that kind of both playfulness, if we want, the surface level, to the micro challenging and less used perspective of what fearology involves, and to be sensitive to that and to share that in your writing and work. If you write about fearology and want to use that word, of course, there's no law against using the word however you want to use it, just like there's no law against using the word ecology. And because I grew up in my early 20s looking at the notion of ecology and studying it very seriously to a point of a career for a few years, that I watched how ecology became a very serious word for the study of energy flow and movement dynamics within living systems in relationship to non-living systems. That was ecology in a scientific definition, to becoming a word that everybody or anybody could use, and use it to diss the ecology movement, to make fun of it, and or just to use it as the ecology of anything. So that word was attached to virtually anything. It lost to me all depth and meaning, and just became this large, simple, common sense term, and missed all the nuances of all those levels of understanding of what ecology is and could be, or ecologies, and so on. So I've seen the watering down process, right? That's what this video is a cautionary, 2-year sort of come back to say, okay, I'm still seeing a lot of popular use of fearology, and I see uses even by people who cite my work, or some of my colleagues who write about fearism and philosophy of fearism, and yet there's still a tendency to use it in a very superficial fearology kind of way. And yeah, it disturbs me, but again, I'm not going to be the philology police out there, or the word police. What's politically correct and what's not, I'm just not going to do that. It's a waste of time. People are going to do what they want to do. But if you listen to my videos, I'm presuming that because you've tuned in to me today, you're interested in a little more deeper levels, and some of those complex levels, and at least curious about it, right? So I would also say, if you went on and looked at videos, there's people who use fearology and have tried to define it. I've seen this a few times. Recently, Mary Poffenroth is one of the set of videos, of teaching videos, and their focus is on the science of fear, the new science, the neurobiology of fear, studies from MRIs done on the brain, and people find that very interesting. I find it somewhat interesting. I find it over determined in terms of a methodology of understanding fear. But it's not the whole, and it's not an integral perspective. It's a particular science, neurological, biological perspective. I love biology. It's my first career. So, but I also came to understand that there's way more about knowledge and rigor and methodological trans and interdisciplinary understandings that are way beyond that. So I've called it, fear studies, and I have a journal that I founded a couple of years ago, International Journal of Fear Studies. You can look all that up if you want. You can look up the Fearology Institute. There's, again, various things I've promoted. So I think there's not a lot more I want to say other than, yeah, I am serious. I think the world is in a real serious situation with the relationship of what fear is. And because I take this perspective I have, I don't use just common sense understandings of the term fear. So that's just simple. So if you investigate it all down the rabbit hole, from the big box to the little box container of what is fearology, and that will be something that you'll go through. It's like a journey of, oh, okay, I thought this was fear. Oh, then there's this level, and then there's, down to this level, and it gets more and more complex. That's what those are meant to show, is the complexity that is essential for a full, rigorous field and study of fearology. So that someday we can be recognized as a field, as a legitimate fearologist, professional, and or, as I say, academic scholar, researcher, and practitioner, to actually offer solutions and analysis, right? Which is so important. Without a good analysis, you don't have a good set of solutions. You may have one that's simple and cheap and fast, short term, but the work I do and present and promote, and I'd like to invite again, I'd like to have thousands of people seriously interested in fearology. So feel free to contact me if you want. You know my email is r.michaelfisher52@gmail.com, and my work is all over the internet. And if you find some others who work on fear that you want to connect with me, you can do that. But just to let you know, after 31 years of searching and reading tens of thousands of articles and many thousands and thousands of different researchers, thinkers, professionals, writers, I've seen pretty much everything. I'm rarely surprised by something new. So I pretty much got a good sense of where fearology needs to go, and that doesn't make me the knower of all wisdom of all times and all places. But I do have a strong sense and vision for where fearology needs to go next. And yeah, take it seriously and be playful at the same time. Thanks very much for listening today.